I went to school in Sandusky, Illinois. It was called Union Elementary School. I'm sorry, Young Elementary School. And after I graduated from Young Elementary School, I went on to high school, which is Alexander County Central High School, which was in another small suburb of that area called Tams, Illinois. So I graduated from high school at Alexander County Central High School, Tams, Illinois. I was born in South Bend, Indiana, but I grew up in southern Illinois, a little town called Sandusky, Illinois. It was a farm that was given to my great-great-grandfather. And my mother and the rest of her siblings were born on that farm in a little town of Sandusky, Illinois. And they had about 40 acres of land there in southern Illinois. So I grew up there in southern Illinois on the farm, taking care of my grandmother, kind of sort of, because my aunt, who happened to be one of my mother's oldest sisters, she was a school teacher. And so she always came to South Bend, Indiana, where the rest of my siblings were at that time. And she wanted to take one of the siblings there to live on the farm and to help take care of our aging grandmother. So when she came this one particular summer to visit us, as she always did in the summer months when she wasn't teaching, she asked which one of us wanted to go and live on the farm and help take care of our grandmother for that particular summer. Well, me being an adventurous type person, I raised my hand and volunteered. My other siblings did not want me to go, so they said, "Why are you raising your hand to go down there in the country where there's nothing but chickens and hogs and all that smelly stuff?" So I actually volunteered to go, and I went down there to live, to visit for the summer. And I ended up staying on the farm for the latter part of my life. And then, when I turned 18 years old and finished high school, I joined the United States Air Force in St. Louis, Missouri. And from there, that's where all the adventurous stuff in my life began. Okay. On the farm, I got there when I was 8 years old, and I learned how to do a lot of things on the farm. My grandmother taught me a lot of different things, and my aunt, of course, and I had a lot of chores to do. So I was practically raised up by myself on the farm, but there was a lot of work to do. In the summer months, I would pick cotton, bale hay. I have also picked apples, peaches, strawberries, and I also had my own garden there on the farm at one time. We had this garden, of course, and we were the only ones in that area because of my being a school teacher. We had an indoor latrine. The rest of the folks there, of course, they had outdoor facilities they used, and they always said that we were a little bit better off, of course, and we were, because I was a school teacher, and we did have the conveniences of having an indoor restroom and plumbing, indoor plumbing. But we still had things that we did on the farm there. My aunt used to raise, she had chickens, and of course, and all the farm animals, but she used to have eggs that she would deliver to a place called Cairo, Illinois, which was about 18 miles south of Sandusky. So eggs was a pretty big thing there, but I did learn to do a lot of things on the farm. It was a lot of hard work. But the thing I enjoyed mostly about being on the farm was the fact that I didn't have to contend with any of my brothers and sisters in order to get the things that I needed. Not that I had that much. I did not have a lot of material things when I was growing up as a child. The things I had that I value the most are the love and the appreciation of family. And my grandmother and my aunt were very, very religious people, and so I spent a lot of my time in the church. In fact, St. Paul AME Church was a church that we attended as a family, and I was put in a position to be the Sunday school superintendent as a really young man. So I read the Bible a lot, and I still do. Not as much as I probably should, but I still do read the Bible, and I'm very, very into the Word of God. So I'm appreciative for that part of my life. So I didn't have a lot of things. I often say that I was blessed because I had two mothers. I had my aunt, and then I had my own mother. So I was very, very blessed in that area. But I joined the Air Force after going to high school with a friend by the name of Lloyd Smith. That was my best buddy at the time. And he lived in another little small town around there called Hodges Park, Illinois. You had Tams, which was about 8 or 10 miles from Sandusky, and then you had Hodges Park going south, and then you had Carroll, which was further down the road. But I joined the Air Force, and I started traveling when I was 18 years old under the buddy plan with my friend Lloyd Smith and I. We decided we would do that. Well, little did I know that it would take me to a lot of wonderful places. The first base I was stationed was a base called Forbes Air Force Base, which is in Topeka, Kansas, and that's where I met my wife, and the wife who became my wife, and we got married. I got there in 1961. I met her the latter part of 1961. We got married in 1962. And my wife and I, we have 3 children today. We have 2 sons and a daughter. So that was the first base I was stationed at. And I came in the Air Force as a supply specialist. And I cross-trained from that career field into what they call the Special Services or Morale, Welfare, and Recreation area. So that's where I spent the majority of my time in the military, 24 years and 6 months, in fact. But that was my first base. And then I left there, we got married there, and then we began to travel. We left there and we went to another base, which is probably unheard of. It's called, it was at Francis E. Warren, Cheyenne, Wyoming. That was my second assignment, which was a real tough place to be stationed for a young man like myself and my family. So it was very cold up there. So we stayed there. I stayed there for a short period of time. And then I got my first remote assignment, which I could not take my family to, and that was to Osan, Korea. It was you had to travel it by yourself. It was unaccompanied. Remote, we call a remote tour. I stayed there for 13 months, and then I came back to the States, and the second place that they sent me from there was at a base called, it's in Big Spring, Texas. I think the name of the base now. Webb Air Force Base, Big Spring, Texas. Well, I had been to Texas for basic training, that's true, and I had been to San Antonio for basic training, also to Amarillo for tech school, and then I went to my first base, Forbes. I said that earlier, Kansas. But anyway, that's the school that after my tech school, I went to Forbes, and then I went on to Cheyenne, Wyoming, and then to Webb Air Force Base, Texas. That was my second assignment. Stayed at Webb for about 2 years, and then I started traveling overseas. I got an overseas assignment to Zweibrücken Air Force Base in Germany. And we spent about 4 years there with my family. And well, after spending 4 years there, I left there and we came back to Kincheloe, Michigan, Sault Ste. Marie, Michigan, up around the Canadian border. Stayed there for a short period of time. Well, my mother-in-law, my wife's mother, she was having some medical issues, and I put in for a humanitarian assignment so we could be close to her and so, to my wife's mother. So I got an assignment to Washington State, Fairchild Air Force Base, Spokane, Washington. Stayed there for a short period of time. And then we moved, I left my family there, and I had got another remote assignment to Turkey, Eskişehir, Turkey. And then I had a 4-year assignment to England. Went to England and stayed there for about 4 years. And then at that time, I had almost pretty close to 18 or 19 years in the Air Force. And so we stayed there, and then that put me over the hump. I'm sorry, to 20 years, about 20, almost 20 years. Well, we stayed there. When I went over there, I had about 18 or 19 years in when I went to England, and we ended up staying over there for 4 years. And I decided was going to retire, but I didn't really know exactly where we wanted to go because I didn't have a lot of money saved. We had to save a lot of money. We did have some, but I didn't have any kids at home, and that was a blessing because of just my wife and myself. So we decided that we would come back to Austin because I had our youngest son was living here at the time. So we ended up coming back to Austin, and we started looking for a house. At that time, well, in Austin, around 1985, 86 time frame, the job market was pretty tough, and I guess it stays tough all the time, especially if you don't have a college degree. So, in coming back here, I was beating the pavement, trying to find a job, and I could not really find a substantial job. I couldn't find one that I felt like I was qualified for. Although I didn't have a college degree, I only had a lot of experience, and I did have a retirement check. So the lady told me, she says, well, Mr. Bethel, you can't qualify for a house because you don't have a job. I'm saying, well, ma'am, I do have a retirement. She says, well, that's not enough to qualify to buy a home. So what I ended up doing, I took a job. I went to the post office, applied for a civil service to the post office. And at that time, you had a long wait. And so I ended up working through the operations office at the post office, which was downtown at the time, for a contracted mail carrier by the name of Eckert Mail Service. And I worked for him for a short period of time, and I was hauling mail to East Texas. So I did that for a short period of time. Well, anyway, I did not really like that much, but it was a job. It qualified me to buy a home, and that was the main objective. So after I bought the home and we moved in, I was thinking, well, this job is only a contractor type job, but so I need to have more than that. So I started to get more education, and I went back to school at Texas. At that time, it was Southwest Texas State. So I went back to school, and I ended up going there and finishing my degree there. However, after working at the post office for a while, and then I decided that since I couldn't find a job here, I decided I was going to try to get into civil service, of course. So what I did, I applied through what they call a special examining unit, which was a place you could submit your paperwork in order for you to qualify to get into civil service. So that's what I did. It was a special examining unit. So I did that, and they came back and rated me as a GS 7/9. But there were no job openings in the Austin area, and so I was telling my wife, I said, well, what I could think we can do is I can apply like worldwide for a job. Well, it just so happened that I found a job in Boston, Massachusetts. So I took a job in Boston, civil service. It was GS9. I went out there and I worked for a while. Well, that was a long ways from home, and the only way I could see my family, I couldn't really take them with me because the job did not offer all of the benefits like paying your way out there and the transportation and all that, and moving you at the government cost and take that cost. So I ended up driving out there by myself, and I maintained an apartment out there for about a year or two, and then it just so happened that I found out that there was a job vacancy at Peterson Air Force Base in Colorado Springs, and so I drove back to Austin after being out in Hanscom Field, Bedford, Massachusetts, for about 2 years. I jumped in my car and drove back. In fact, I drove out there for the job, and then I drove back to Austin to pick up my wife and to see if we could possibly relocate. Well, the job at Peterson Field did not pay any benefits either, or it was a movement on my own, so I drove out there, and I worked at Peterson Field for about maybe two years. Well, after about a year and a half, they have what we call a base closure, reduction in force. So I moved from Peterson Field, Colorado Springs, down to San Antonio, Texas, and I met a lady down there, and I got hired by her to work as an athletic director at Kelly. And I stayed there for about I worked there in that position for about a couple of years. Well, I started having a lot of um, anxiety type problems, and I ended up, through the medical evaluation, I ended up getting out of that particular job I was in, and I cross-trained and moved into communications, and I started working in communications, and I worked there, still at Kelly, worked there for about a year, another couple of years, and they decided to have a base closure, so there I am again. Base closure, reduction in force, so they offered me a package to retire. I had about 16, 18 years in the civil service by that time, and they offered me a package to either retire or either to look for another position if they could find one in the Austin area for me. So I elected to retire with the option of being able to go back and finish my other 2 years for 20 years of civil service. So I left Kelly, came home, and about 4 or 5 weeks later, I get this notice in the mail that they have a job opening up at Fort Hood, working for the Department of the Army. So here I go up there to work, and I didn't like the job at all. It was a quality assurance person. I was working in the food service type operation, which I really didn't particularly care for. A lot of work involved, and they wanted me to work 7 days a week. So I'm saying to myself, I don't want to do that. But anyway, I worked there for a while, and eventually my boss says, well, you know, Mr. Bethel, you can always go back. You can always put your retirement papers back in and go back into retirement. Well, I had about almost 19 years in at that time. So that's what I decided to do. My most favorite place is probably Germany. I really liked the living was totally different than the United States. It seemed to have, it was very easy. There was no rush, nobody rushing around to do things. The quality of living I thought was a lot better also. As far as that being one of my most favorite places that I've ever been stationed overseas, so that was probably the most enjoyable tour that I had, because we really did a lot of things with family over there. I had two boys, and I mentioned earlier I have three children. My daughter was not raised with my wife or myself, but anyway, the two boys, they had a lot of opportunity to travel a lot in Germany, and we did a lot of family-oriented type things. We had a club over there called the Elite Social Club that we founded. I wasn't the founder of it. I was one of the founders. But anyway, it was called the Elite Social Club. And what we would do, we paid dues, $5 a month. And in the housing area that we lived in Zweibrücken, Germany, that's where I was stationed for 4 years. We would take our $5 and put it in we had a little bank account and all that. And what we would do with the money, we would take our families on trips to different places in Europe. So we traveled a lot. We did a lot of things with family. So it was a very family-oriented type of an assignment. That's probably why I liked it better than the others. We did a lot of things over in Germany. We had our own little club there. We lived in the housing area, so what we did, we took our laundry room and we turned it into a party room. We called it a Club 31. But anyway, it was an outing for us, because at that time, alcohol, you couldn't drink and drive, of course. Alcohol was the glamorized. You couldn't do those kind of things. So we didn't do those as NCOs and stuff. So we just basically had our own little club in the housing area. So we spent a lot of our time there. We would have our Christmas parties and all that sort of thing. No driving involved. And the weather being as such in Germany as it was really bad. A lot of snow and ice. So that really cut down on our trips. After we would get off from work, we'd come to the housing area. We would spend a lot of our time there doing a lot of things with our families. So that's probably why I say it was the most enjoyable assignment for myself. So after I retired in Austin in 1986, I started doing, I eventually got my bachelor's degree at Texas State University. I have a bachelor's degree in management. So I've been, after I did that, I started doing some things kind of on my own. I started writing and doing some self-publishing of books. I started doing that. I really, in Austin here, I started writing poetry. I'm a poet by nature. And I had to come up with something that would identify myself from everybody else, differently from everybody else. So I came up with this idea called Hayward humor. That's where I started this at. And when I started this Hayward humor show, I started doing it for everybody. You know, I just enjoy talking to people, and I was doing a lot of free things in the community. And Hayward humor has really been a blessing to my life. I call myself a motivational entertainer. That's what I call myself, even though I am a published author and poet. Well, Hayward humor has really been a blessing, like I say, it really has. It has blessed a lot of people. I've traveled to many places to do a show that I put together. Having been in the morale, welfare, and recreation business, I saw a lot of people doing a lot of different things. So what I did, I took a little bit from different places in the entertainment world, and I put together this show, 45 minutes. And it really has turned out very, very nicely. My audiences have been most of the senior communities, and I have really enjoyed sharing some moments with them. I'm not a singer. I don't play any instruments per se, but I like to tell funny stories, and also I like to sing a few gospel songs, try to, even though I'm not a singer. But I really enjoyed that. So for about 6 or 7 years, I traveled the United States and did the show basically on my own with a little book that I had written called Hayward Humor. This was the first little book I wrote. And I just shared the book and self-published with people as I traveled. And it too has been a blessing to me and to a lot of folks. The show runs about 45 minutes, and some of the places that I've traveled to are places. I've been out in California and done the shows, many shows out there. What I tried to do was to schedule the show in certain areas where I wouldn't spread myself too thin. So I would go and do shows at say on a cluster of about 12, 14 mile radius. And that way I could do 2 shows in the morning and 2 in the afternoon. And met so many wonderful people in nursing homes and assisted living homes and individual living also. And like I said, the show has really, really been a blessing. So California, Kentucky, I've traveled to Kentucky and did the shows. I've been to Indiana, I've done shows. I've even surprised my mother. She was in a nursing home prior to her passing. And I went to do a show for her, surprisingly. She didn't even know I was coming. That was a blessing. I've been out in Washington State. I've also done shows in Panama. I went to Panama. My oldest son was stationed in Panama, so I went over there about a week. I did a book signing of Hayward Humor and did some shows there. So it's really been very rewarding. I haven't done much on the East Coast, mostly on the Midwest and on the West Coast. That's where my shows have been. I've been to Kansas, Illinois. I've been all around like I said, the Indiana area, because that's where my family has been. Then in the military environment, I've also been there to do book signings of Hayward Humor. Well, after doing the show for about 7 or 8 years, I kind of got a little tired of traveling with my little car, with my car and my little books per se, because I was funding all my own trips basically. So I started coming up with some different characters that I do, character interpretation. So that's how I ended up at the Carver, kind of, sort of. I've been a volunteer here for about 5, 6, 7 years maybe, doing on Juneteenth Day, I come in and I do the character for the slaves, and I've also helped volunteer and do other things in the Carver when they need me to assist them. They came to the plantation that he was on. His mother and father had been slaves, and when they came to the plantation, he said that the Union soldiers came in to deliver the word, and boy, they were singing all kinds of songs about onward and upward. And he said as soon as they started catching on with that song, he said he kind of caught on with that song a little bit too, and he started singing too. But he didn't even know why he was singing, because he thought he was a hero, just like the Union soldiers. But he said that's not true. He said he was just a free man, and he found out that he was free. He said, you know what else they did? He said the white folks kept on feeding, just like they did when they were slaves. He He said, but he knew he was free. He said he knew he didn't take the orders from nobody ever again. What a great feeling he said it was that came over him, with a great spirit. And the main thing that he wanted folks to know that, you know what, you ain't got to listen to nobody tell you nothing. So a lot of folks, they really didn't understand what he said. He certainly understood it, and he knew what he needed to do. So he moved on into Texas, and that's where he started his family. And that's kind of the story of Felix Hayward. I want y'all to know a little about that. So this is the first station. Felix Hayward was a Texas slave. And the next station I'm going to take you to, you're going to hear some more stories inside from my friends in there. They can tell you more about being free. Okay? I've written about, in addition to this book of Hayward humor, I've written another book, a conglomeration with two other authors. It's called Abide in the Spirit of Change, and it's 3 different authors in one book, and it's on the internet. It's on Amazon.com. The book's doing okay, so that was another blessing to my life and to my family. And then I came out with this 3rd book called A Life of Humor, and this book here, I basically wrote it to kind of share some thoughts about my family. I also took it last year aboard the Norwegian Jewel cruise line and did 2 shows on the cruise line. Not as the major entertainer, but I had my own room to perform. So the first day, it was last November 2014. The first show that I did, we had about 75 to 100 people, 100 persons there, since they gave me a room to do it in. The second show that I did, I had about 100, maybe 150 or 200 people, which was another blessing. So that's where this book came from. Sure. And so that's kind of what I've been doing. I've been giving back to the community. I really believe in doing that. Anytime that I can help anybody. I am also a disabled veteran. I mentioned that earlier, that I am presently a member of Chapter 4, Lone Star Chapter 4, DAV here. I'm the Junior Vice Commander for that chapter, and we help disabled veterans. That's what I do. And I kind of mess around the house a little bit, and I make some homemade pound cakes. That's the kind of thing I kind of do it on my own, and that's really been a blessing too. I make them for friends and family and people that want them. So that's kind of what I've been doing, and I'm also a member of the Employer Support the Garden Reserve, and what we do there, we help the young people who are being deployed. When they come back from their deployment, a lot of them are employed before they leave, and then we help them get reinstated in their jobs, in the job market. So that's kind of where I'm at today. I'm in the process of writing another book, of course, and then we call these chapbooks. They're small chapbooks, but they're very delightful to do, and I enjoy writing them. So in terms of giving back to the community, I offer my time, my services, whatever I can do. I also mentor 2 or 3 youth in the city, and I've been doing that for some time. I've been working on a scholarship fund for my Hayward Humor show to give a scholarship to a student who is majoring in the humanities area or something like that, in public speaking. So I've done a lot of it, and it's really been very, very enjoyable. And I just wanted to thank you for inviting me to come and to share a little bit of my life with you. Austin is, I call Austin a melting pot because it has a lot of different, all kinds of people are here. I find it, generally speaking, I find it to be a very friendly city. Although I think there's a lot of diversity in the way the population is divided. I think that I've grown being here. Even though I wasn't born here, a lot of people have really accepted me as being an Austinite or being a Texan, and I really appreciate that. I think it's a great place to raise kids. I still say we have pretty good weather, although it's very hot here. But I think it's an ideal city for raising a family. And you talk about crime rates and things like that. Every city has its share of crime, but I think that here a person has a pretty decent chance of making a decent living here. So it's and it's also a great place for retirement. Austin has more military retirees probably than it's about I think it's about the third largest population in the world, third or fourth. I think I might be mistaken on that, but I think it's about third or fourth in terms of population for retirees, people being from military retired people. So. And it's just a great place. I really enjoy. I enjoy the Carver very much. It's a very vibrant place to be, and I just find it so hard. I find it hard to believe that people don't use the facility as much as they should. I see it, especially the ones who live I live in the north end of town, but the people that live there, the African Americans and the minority populations around the city, I don't really think they know about the Carver. It's a wonderful place. It has a lot to offer to people. And I'm always talking about it to people all the time about, hey, have you been to visit the Carver? And I've also taken people on tours through the Carver. And when we had our family reunion here about 4 years ago, my wife and I hosted it. I made a point. I got a couple of vans. I brought my family down here to see this. And I took them on a tour through here as well as a young lady who's working here to go on a tour. So it's a great place. So I think Austin is a great city. We still have a lot of work to do, but I really I enjoy living here. I really do. When I moved here, when we bought our home here in the south north, Highway 183 or Research Boulevard was only 2 lanes coming in. It was just 2 lanes. There was no highway there. So it has really grown. Then we've added the Metro Rail system, which I haven't used yet. I don't know much about that, but I've seen Austin just grow. People are moving here in leaps and bounds. Construction everywhere. We've kind of outgrown ourselves really in terms of land because, there's so many people moving here all the time. I've seen it change an awful lot. Burston Air Force Base used to be the base. Now it's the airport. That's the big change. The place that was the old airport is occupied by apartments now. So one of the things that I really enjoy about Austin, too, is the fact that we have the University of Texas, and we also have a historically our college is at Houston-Tillotson. A lot of people never heard of it before. And I'm like, you never heard of Houston-Tillotson? They go, no, never heard of that college before, university rather. And so I have really seen it grow, and we got St. Mary's also, St. Ed's rather, and so I've seen the city just grow. I have one word that I use all the time, and I have my great granddaughter with me today. She goes with me a lot, but the one word that I tell young people is called responsibility. To me, that's one of the biggest words I've ever in my vocabulary, because being responsible is something that there's no way for you to be able to live without being responsible. You have to be in order to maintain life. So I've written a poem about responsibility. I don't have it here with me, but I would recite it for you. But it's let's see, I'm not you and you're not me, but between us both, we have a responsibility. Yours is to God, yourself, and your fellow man, to treat everyone with respect and do the very best that you can. I bet many of you think your parents owe you all this, and you take everything for granted without giving them a kiss. Even when they try to buy you all the latest fashions, trying to take care of your wants, needs, and your passions. I would be remiss if I didn't mention attitude. If you talk back to adults, that's extremely rude. I want you to close your eyes, take a deep breath, and think. And if you're this kind of person, then your attitude really stinks. It's a poem that talks about being responsible. And I really take that very religiously, because when you're raising kids in today's society, you have to teach them to be responsible. And I think that starts in the home. It can't start when they go to school. You got to start it in the home. Responsible for your actions, responsible for what you do, responsible for the things you have, responsible to me. And I put that on all of my kids and my grandchildren, because I have a responsibility as a parent. You have a responsibility to me as a child. So that's the way I look at life, being responsible. I'm 72.
Okay.
Most of my friends are older than I am. And it's kind of always been that way. I'm talking about my really close friends. I've met a lot of wonderful people because my father, I wasn't around him that much. And my father had a third grade education. My mother did finish high school. But I learned so many things from older people. And I also learned from young too. So I do have a lot of energy still to do a lot of things. I see myself as really being in the prime of my life right now because I see actors and actresses and people who are been successful in life. There's no age limit to how or when you can be successful in life. So I kind of look at it. I look at life that way. We all have I think, a knack for doing that. I don't know. I don't know how people. I shouldn't say I don't know, but there are many people who have talent. Well, God gave us all talents. He gave us many talents. And finding your niche in life is something that's very important too. A lot of people never find that niche and they don't really know what their purpose in life is. And my purpose in life is people. That's my purpose. To motivate, to help people. That's why God put me here, I feel. So that's what I think.